the German Consulate General Kolkata. I welcome you all to the first web-based session of our science lectures. From 2016, we have been organizing lectures like this to further strengthen the cooperation and collaboration between Germany and India on science and research. These lectures aim to promote an Indo-German scientific cooperation platform that has been created for German scientists and Indian scientists who have research projects with German institutes. The objective is to share their latest research findings with other scientists, academicians, and any other interested individuals. To continue this interaction within the science community in today's unprecedented and unexpected scenario, for the time being, we have made these science lectures web-based. Today's topic is effects of COVID-19 on higher education, and the guest speakers are Dr. Lydia Potts of Karl von Ossietzky University, Oldenburg, Germany, and Professor Paula Banerjee of Calcutta University, India. Now I'm going to hand over to the moderator of this session, Professor Pulakshan Gupta from the Department of Geological Sciences, Jadavpur University, who is a former Alexander von Humboldt and DRD Fellow, as well as a recipient of Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize. Professor Pulakshan Gupta, please.
Well, Shushmita, I hope that I'm audible to you all.
Shushmita, we can only see half of your face. That's it.
Well, yes. doesn't matter. I mean, the speakers are more important. And is it okay? I mean, I have adjusted
this. Okay. It's okay.
Now
it's all right.
Fine. Yeah. So because I have to block the light behind. Okay. Thank you, Shushmita, for a good introduction and very warm evening to all the participants. Friends, you know that when the society is set out of equilibrium for various reasons, it could be social unrest, it could be war, it could be natural hazards, it could be pandemic. The sector that gets the maximum hit is education. And restoration of the social equilibrium, if I talk in my own subject's term, the restoration of equilibrium takes time. For education sectors, from my past little experience, because I grew up in turbulent 70s, it takes not only days, months, but it takes years. Through proper planning, preemptive activities can reduce the time of equilibrium, restoration of equilibrium. And I have speaker, Dr. Potts and Professor Banerjee, and they will enlighten us what will be the fate of our education system, or what ought to be done or not to be done after this COVID pandemic. So with these few words, I request our first speaker, but before that, I just want to, again, I have some problem and I really do not know whether, well, the sharing is, okay. Now you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So before I formally invite Dr. Potts, let me quickly say a few things about her, which you can see, you can read it, but just a few things, because this is the duty of the moderator to say a few things about the speaker. Dr. Potts has a very illustrious career. He is from the University of Karl von Ossietzky, University of Oldenburg, Germany. She has done work in several fields, including this migrations and gender studies, women and gender studies, intellectual education, political sciences. She is a specialist in migration studies, and what is very important for today's talk, and possibly that will decide our fate in future, she is actively participating in translational research and development of curriculum with different countries across the globe. So we are eager to listen to Dr. Potts. Dr. Potts, now the screen is yours. Herzlich willkommen.
Danke sehr. Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation and for this very kind introduction. I would like to share a bit of a PowerPoint with you. We try to get that online now. One window. Full screen. And yeah, so I would like to talk a bit about my experience with our pandemic semester here in Oldenburg, and I would like to take that further to a somewhat national perspective. We can't share the screen. Firefox doesn't allow it. Yeah, I don't know. So I just have my PowerPoint here. Yeah, and for this semester, that's also maybe interesting as part of the background. I have especially been teaching in gender studies, and we have done a transnational module. So the teaching was shared between Professor Banerjee, Professor Sheila Meintjes from South Africa, and me. So that was an interesting experiment to do that in an online mode. We have done shared teaching before, but this was the first time that we had to do it online because travel was not possible. Oh God, where's the beginning here? So, yeah, so I would like to talk about the effects of COVID-19 on higher education, a little bit about the case of Germany, and then I would like to take this further. So my two questions: what are the effects of COVID-19 on the day-to-day workings of the university, and what will the medium-term, long-term effects be? So if you are teaching in a German university this summer, you will notice that COVID-19 has massive effects on the library is closed for some time and only opened gradually after a while. The Mensa, the university restaurant, was closed and is only open to a limited service nowadays. And also very many other services have been cancelled or can only be used to a limited extent. In Oldenburg, that also includes that students are moving out of students' residences and apartments, because with all the online teaching, there is no need to stay in Oldenburg. You can be anywhere, and especially with your parents, and save cost. So altogether, the semester has had, or the COVID situation has had a lot of consequences. Then with regard to research, this is, I guess, very mixed across the disciplines. So research that needed infrastructure, that needed laboratories and research materials and so on, was much more affected than what we usually do in the social sciences. here maybe the most important effect was that exchange and the international dimension of such projects was only possible in a limited way, had to shift also to digital forms of contact. So no research visits, no research stays, no field work. It had massive consequences for our master students who would have done field work globally, and that was all not possible. Yeah. On the other hand, exchange and international projects can to some extent continue online, and that is at times also a very interesting and rewarding experience. I would now like to talk a bit more about teaching. In German universities prior to COVID-19, I would think in all universities there were learning platforms in use. But they were only implemented to very limited extent. So we would use them to register our students, for some communication with the students, to upload PDFs and things, but otherwise they were there, but they were not really key to what we were doing on a day-to-day basis. And that shifted dramatically. In a way, COVID arrived at a time when it was still possible to do preparations for the upcoming semester. So in Germany, the summer semester runs usually from mid-April to mid-July. So when in mid-March COVID struck, we were able to start preparing, and in most universities, the semester started with just a delay of 1 or 2 weeks, and then it started exclusively online. And I think that was the case across all of Germany. And this was possible because of these learning platforms being in place. So we had to quickly learn the various features that these platforms offer, like the video conferencing, the forums and wikis, the quizzes, the facility to, or the possibility to store pre-recorded lectures, and the various other elements. And on this basis, in most universities, we had quite a smooth transition due to the flexibility of the students and the professors, but also because, for example, there was massive upgrade of the internet capacity of universities. So in my own universities, a few days before the semester started, we all thought, no, this is impossible to work with hundreds of video conferences going on at the same time. The server will break down, that's for sure. We were really convinced. But no, the leadership had made arrangements, and no such thing happened. So, and I think that here and there was the case, not only in this university, but in general. So the summer semester being over now, we have the upcoming winter semester, which will run from October to February. And for that, in most universities, some still stick to exclusive online teaching, but most universities will switch to what is called a hybrid semester. So that for some students, there will be face-to-face teaching. In my university, this will be especially for first semester students. This will happen in a completely different setting. All classrooms will only be used to 25% of their capacity. So a classroom that usually hosts 40 students can now only be used by 10 people. So this will limit class size. This will limit also the number of classes that can be run face-to-face. All lectures are supposed to be online, and also most other classes. So let's say the hybrid semester, due to this use that only 25% of the capacity of the lecture rooms can be used. So we could say that 75% of the teaching in this coming winter will still be online, and 25% roughly will be face to face. So what are the results of online teaching so far? And I would, at this point, really like to talk from my personal experience. And I would say that overall, that would include Professor Banerjee and Professor Banerjee, we were very successful with running that class, but we also had there's also some ambivalent experiences. It's clear that online teaching, at least in the beginning, means a much higher workload for teachers. We have to do more lecturing, there is less classroom interaction, it has to be pre-recorded, etc. And from the students, and I'll introduce you to details, we had mixed reactions. So I'd like to give you 6-7 comments from our students. So the pandemic semester, from one student's perspective, for me, it became clear how important physical classroom attendance and human-to-human interaction is. Online discussions with fellow students is not the same. Another one said, asynchronous and therefore more inclusive learning, meaning that students can watch lectures and seminars also later. This contributes to the utopian idea of equality of chances for all students. Also, the content that many teachers provided in form of videos prior to the seminars are very good, useful, and interesting. I'll just continue. Still, this idea of asynchronous teaching and preparation was very important for the students. The partly asynchronous preparation of content, as well as alternative, more creative exams, in accordance with the state of the art in didactics, e.g. case analysis instead of written tests and presentations instead of papers. So that was very welcome. Then with this specific class, there was also video conferences with professors from other countries, saves flying costs and expands the horizons of the students. With regard to their personal work situation, I think that is a very interesting dimension. So some students pointed out, my own learning is harder, although the video lectures offer a good structure. Personally, the workload seems higher to me. Another one, you need discipline and self-organization to meet this challenge. And finally, there is definitely less motivation to engage fully with the study material, the discussions. Level, a student pointed out better concentration during self-learning, but also some difficulties with staying concentrated during online teaching, not only in this course. I need more effort to stay focused, but it is a very important and valuable opportunity to be able to watch the lectures anywhere and anytime. There was also a quote, where did that disappear? That a student was pointing out that she was able to change the diapers of her baby while listening to the presentations and participating in the class, which would not have been possible in face-to-face classes. So there is upsides and downsides for the students, but overall, I would think that at least for the pandemic semester, overall the student feedback was very good. And it was also a very interesting experience for teachers in this team teaching situation, because we would also have to discuss a lot. What do we do? How do we present it? We would also listen to each other's presentations, and we could also do that in an asynchronous way. So it was not necessary to be there Friday at 10. We could also do that later on. So overall, an interesting experience for both students and teachers, and downsides were also felt by the students. But they really highlighted that there is also added value compared to face-to-face teaching. So, and I do think, talking to quite a few of my colleagues from other universities and also from colleagues within this university, that this is findings that can be generalized. So I would like to move to my second question. What will be the medium long-term effects? The DAAD, for example, already published a major brochure, a book about the COVID-19 impact on international higher education with studies and forecasts. And they point out that there is an astonishing number of analyses and forecasts that have already been published, and so many that it is easy to lose track. And I have to admit, I haven't really dug into these, or into most of these. What I'm saying now is also to be, I have to admit that I haven't really been into a detailed research. But what strikes me very much is that the pandemic semester, which will turn into pandemic semesters, is coming or is pushing a digital revolution in higher education. So this has been addressed in very many contexts, and one of those contexts is also the World Economic Forum, and they were highlighting that the pandemic has forced universities to bring their courses online, and that is the case globally, or at least in the global north. And that this is just one step along the road to a new educational paradigm. And we can expect a new model to emerge once COVID-19 has passed. But I would like to really stress that I would not expect a major shift after COVID-19. I rather think that COVID-19 is paving the way. And it is paving the way with regard to a lot of cost-benefit analysis in higher education, and that these cost-benefit analysis much more online teaching and so on. So I'd like to get back to Germany for a few minutes. In Germany, most universities are state-funded and do not charge participation cost. COVID-19 leads to increased overall state spending for healthcare, to counter economic developments, help programs for businesses and workers. And eventually, due to the recession that's on its way, state income will shrink considerably. As a result, we have to expect that university funding will have to be reviewed as most other expenditures. And I would, I would forecast that universities have to expect major cuts in the next couple of years. So in a way, universities will need to find answers, and online teaching after an initial and preparatory stage, this what we had last semester and maybe what we will have for another 1 or 2 semesters. After that, it reduces costs in infrastructure. Students don't need classrooms anymore, for example. They also not necessarily need residential facilities and many other services. So these costs in infrastructure and staff will be most welcome, if not very much needed. And so I would expect that the national and global shifts that we experienced during the COVID-19 eras or semesters will lead from a hybrid semester to hybrid universities, as these structures will bring massive services. I would think that in parts of the global south, currently the infrastructure counteracts such developments. There is low speed or volatile internet connections, there are power cuts, there is lack of learning platforms. But I would expect that eventually the digital revolution will take over, with complex consequences for professors and students, for the methods and the content of teaching, for the dimension of international cooperation and research. As academics, we need to be aware of these upcoming shifts in order to influence them as much as we can, in order to keep critical knowledge production and academic autonomy alive. And so with a micro project, Professor Banerjee and I are trying to do that, that sort of we take the lead in defining what content, what methods, what way of teaching do we want. And yeah, so this is my intervention for today. Thank you for listening.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lydia. It was a wonderful thing. According to this format, we'll take the questions once the second speaker finishes our talk. We have a set of questions already from the from the audience, and I forgot to mention, and that's why I just should the chat box. I will drop some words. And this is my request to all the participants. You just write down your questions as and when you feel like, and we'll take up your questions. I mean, the speakers will be happy to address your question within the stipulated time. And if you fail to address most of the questions, your question, then we will transfer this question to the speaker, who will certainly get back to you in proper time. And one request to all, during the talk, please do not click on the sharing mode. I mean, I want to make it happen. 1 or 2 things are coming as shared slides. I thank for your consideration, and I hope that it will be uninterrupted. Okay, thank you very much. Lydia, you stay there for some time and allow me to introduce Professor Banerjee. And for that, I have to do the same thing. This sharing is actually making me nervous all the time. This really is. It's just sure. Is it coming to you?
Yes.
Has it come to you?
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
You can see.
Yeah.
please, I mean, Shushmita and others, I mean,
Yes,
on
we
a
can see.
lighter
Yes, we
note,
can see it.
please show some sign of life. Otherwise, I really cannot understand whether I am reaching you or not. Okay, fine. Uh, our next speaker is Professor Paula Banerjee. Professor Paula Banerjee is best known for her work on women in borderlands and women and forced migration. And she happens to be the former Vice Chancellor of Sanskrit University, Kolkata, and the former President of International Association for Studies in Forced Migration. She is a faculty member of Department of South and Southeast Asian Studies, University of Calcutta, India. She is accorded with so many awards. Professor Banerjee edited. She was the editor of Refugee Watch and editorial board member of international journal such as Oxford Journal of Refugees. To her credit, she has a number of publications in reputed journals, and the former director of Kolkata-based think tank organization, Kolkata. I mean, being in the city for last 3 decades, I mean, now I understand how little I know about the Kolkata and its people. And it is wonderful to read your CV. Professor Banerjee has been a visiting professor in the university in different countries like Germany, USA, France, Finland, and China. I welcome Professor Banerjee for her talk. Uh, please, Professor Banerjee.
Thank you so much, Professor Shengupto. And hello, Lydia, once again. And Lydia and me, we've been meeting quite regularly now because, as Lydia explained, Professor Potts explained, we did a course together in Germany. And this has been quite an experience for me. So I thought I should share some of my thoughts about what it means to be, you know, uh, being involved in higher education, being involved in teaching and learning in this age of pandemic. Pulokta, you have to switch off your presenting mode, only then I can bring up my PowerPoint. You have to switch off your, yes, okay. I have a PowerPoint, so I will pull it up. Okay, so I guess you can see me.
Yes, it's up
I
there.
can see it. I can see it.
Okay, so today our discussion will be on effects of COVID-19 in higher education. We've already heard from Professor Lydia Potts. Professor Lydia Potts is an extraordinary person because she is one of those, really innovative faculty members. She's in Oldenburg, Germany, as you know, but she travels. She's done courses all over the world, and I think it was her brainchild which brought in together this course on transnational feminism, which we've been involved in for over 5 years now. But this year's involvement is something quite different. However, before going into that sort of an education, I want to talk a little bit about my location, my vantage point, and start with me being in India and how that has affected education as well as higher education as a result of pandemic. I just wanted to bring up this slide up with a little bit of, introductory discussions by personalities like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, and a lot of other people. Education has been in our minds from the time of modernization, even before that, because if you remember, in India, one of the first universities of the world was, created, whether we talk about Takshila or we talk about Nalanda, or there were a number of other universities. However, modern system of education was fairly new in India, and it was in the 80s, 1980s, that we had the development of this modern system, or rather 1880s, that we had the development of modern university system of education. Now, the term
Uh,
university, yes, Shushmita, you want
we
to say
cannot see
something?
your present. Yeah, I just sorry for interruption. We cannot see your presentation because somebody by mistake started presenting, so your presentation has gone from the screen. So if you could just
Oh
do it
my,
again, yeah, yeah.
okay. Mm. So I'll try to start it again. And please, friends, please hold back your presentation. I am not a technological person. I'm a social scientist. So if I get stumped, then I remain stumped.
Request from my side as well as a moderator.
Can
Yeah,
you
it is
see me
coming.
now?
And it is coming. Yeah.
Is it there?
Yeah, yeah. UGC Battle
Okay.
State University.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
You see, I want to start with something quite dramatic, and that is this recent fight between the University Grants Commission, which is a regulatory body of Indian education, and the different universities. And this particular battle started because of COVID-19. When you don't have a talk and chalk classroom, how do you expect universities which still, you know, teach through a very ancient system of teaching? Because remember, as I was saying, Indian education traditionally, through hundreds of years, have been through what we called the Sriti and the Shruti. We remember, we hear, and we get together. We are collegial people. We want to get together in a classroom, have tete with my students. If you ask me, what is my biggest problem in this pandemic is whenever I'm in a classroom, I look forward to seeing that voila moment in my students' eyes. When I'm explaining something and suddenly there's this light in their eyes, when they, understand what is being discussed, and suddenly a lot of very interesting but problematic theories to them become easy. But in this pandemic situation, I don't, I'm not able to see that light. But and so many new, belligerency, many new problems are happening. One of the problems is that UTC suddenly came up with the dictum that we need to have final education before the results were out, and they need to have their examinations by September. A lot of the state universities got together and said, how the heck are we going to have examination? How can we jeopardize students? Now, the dictum is not yet out. Tomorrow, we will get to hear from Supreme Court as to what happens in this particular case, but it is sub judice, so I'm not going to go into that. I just want to flag a few things. One is that UGC is a regulatory body. And there are certain sections that we need to know about UGC. I'm sure a lot of my very dear colleagues and friends who are from the section of higher education do not know these UGC guidelines. But Section 22 is very, very unique, important. Section 12 is also important. I will not go into 12 for the paucity of time. I will just talk about Section 22, which separates the role of UGC and the university. The degree granting institution is the university. The university that way is autonomous. If it's a state university, it is under state jurisdiction. If it's a central university, it is under central jurisdiction. But UGC does not grant degrees. UGC just regulates as to how those degrees can be achieved. That's all. Indian education has been shaped, one can go back into the pre-independence time and talk about many different commissions. I'm sure all of us have heard about the Wood Commission, the Hunter Commission, but in the post-independence period, there were a lot of commissions and committees which were very, very important, like the Radhakrishnan Commission of 1948, the Kothari Commission. Kothari was very important because it created the first NEP, or the National Education Policy, in 1968. Then we have the Ganam Commission, the Kasturi Rangam Committee, and all of these. For West Bengal, we had the Bhabatosh Datta Commission, the Ashok Mitra Commission, and there was a huge debate between these two commissions. But come pandemic, suddenly it seemed that there is a total disruption of education in India. Why this disruption? Because we are, as I told you, collegial people. There was some movement. All of us know that now research and PhDs are available in Shodh Ganga. UGC says 20% of your courses in higher education should come from the online platforms. But, how much of us really took advantage or used the online platforms? Classes were chalk and talk. Classes were, and that is what made our classes interactive. We met as a community because in India, the model of education that was privileged was still, what we call the the teacher mother model or the teacher father model. We always talk about teachers' position in life just after your parents. That has been the philosophy of Indian education. And as far as science is concerned, it is lab based. So, what do you do? This pandemic brought a total disruption. And in this disruption, we figured something very, very important. And that is, from the undergraduate times onwards, Indian education has favored a model where the undergraduate students who were going into social sciences and humanities only remained with their own subjects, and the science students were within their own purview of the parameters of their subjects. Although, we recently, and for that we have to really thank UGC because we talked about converting to the semester system. Now, the philosophy behind that was not, very impressive, because the philosophy behind that was to go away from the British model of education and become a clone of the American model of education. So, the philosophy was that people should be able to take courses from different disciplines. Now, that particular model is interesting because, there, even as a science major, you are forced to take courses from humanities or social science. And the same is true for humanities and social sciences. This was the model that was there. If you look at it historically, it was there. For example, Jadunath Sarkar is a famous historian, but he was also a graduate of one of the science subjects. Today, famous social scientists like Dipesh Chakraborty, he was actually a physics major in Presidency College. But, that mode of education was really stopped, and we sort of selected our own fields very early on and stuck to it. But this disruption today showed that we cannot do that. We have to marry technology to social sciences. We have to marry technology to all fields of education. Otherwise, we will not be able to handle these changes. So initially, as teachers, and I'm sure as students in the audience, they can see one of my students at least, we were all flummoxed as to what do we do. So for a month, we all came to a standstill. But when faced with all these problematic situations, so Lydia was talking about, massive internet system within the university where you are given a platform. India is, this sort of an education is almost unaffordable in Indian state universities. I'm not talking about private universities. I'm not even talking about central universities. You know that there is such a difference in salaries for teachers between state and central universities and private universities. So what is offered in private universities is not the same as state universities. So what did we do? We innovated. We brought the students together. We decided we will buy some of the platforms and decided to bring in students to take advantage of that. We started having online classes. A completely new system of testing needed to be devised, needed to be developed, and that sort of pushed our margins because we are used to students sitting in a room and answering set questions. But that doesn't work any longer because now they have to give their educations from homes. Now they have to give their examinations from home. So what do we do? What kind of an innovation can we undertake, that meets both the standards laid down by higher education bodies. Because you see, undergraduate education in India, even though we don't figure among the best universities of the world, but undergraduate education in India is actually very solid, very good in many,
Didi,
many of.
I have to interject. I'm sorry somebody got in and again your things are
Oh,
disrupted. I mean, like COVID pandemic. I mean, biting this place today, biting that place tomorrow. Uh, with folded arm, I request all my participants, please be little kind to the speaker so that she is not,
you know what? Let me
distracted.
just forget the PowerPoint. Obviously, people are, they have their own. Yes, Sushmita, you were saying something.
I think it would be better to have your PowerPoint since you have got good PowerPoints here. And I would also request all the participants to mute their microphone apart from the speaker. Thank you. Paula, if you could please show your try once again, please.
I will do it again. Oh my, something is wrong. Okay.
Fine.
Yeah. Can you see?
Yeah, effects of COVID-19 on higher education.
And I'm not sure.
Hmm.
It's,
No.
okay.
Changes to form the Indian
Yeah.
scene.
So, let's start with the problems that we have in the Indian scene. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Now we are faced with what is called the Tina effect. There is no alternative. We have to change. But as my previous speaker was talking about, as I saw in the chat box, many of the questions were related to that. What about the digital divide in India? Interestingly, India, if you think of the digital divide, divide, it is not as much as we would, we think about, digital device as a huge sort of a, problem within India. But that if you just, look at it from another perspective, even in interior villages, people have smartphones, people have Androids, and it is through that. So, when we talk about digital divide, yes, it exists. There is digital divide, but what do we do in this sort of a situation? Do we deny education to people in the rural areas? Do we deny education to, let's say, people in the indigenous communities? Do we deny education to Santhal children? Do we deny education to students who want to learn in Olchiki? What do we do? We have to embrace this. There is no alternative. We were moving towards that. I remember I was giving a lecture on knowledge economy about a year back in this sort of a scenario when I said that the digital frontier is the last frontier. We have to accept that, because it is through the digital frontier that we can embrace the world. Where does the term university come from? It comes from the term, universe. The university is meant to bring in the universe for our students, to our students. So, government has to be prevailed upon to see that there has to be a digital penetration in rural areas. We have a new education policy. That policy is tremendously flawed. The reason why I mentioned about all these commissions is that starting from Kothari Commission onwards, we have been talking about endemic poverty in India and how technology can be harbored to break that divide. The government has not done it. So this new education policy that we are talking about, the NEP 2020, is actually an old educational policy that has been bottled in a new bottle. My problem is not with that. I don't care whether it's a new policy or an old policy. I want to see the implementation of that. The Kasturi Committee clearly told us in 2017 that there is absolutely no implementation of the past scenarios, of the past problems that have been brought to our consciousness. How many of us really, took to InflibNet and the online apparatus that was given to us? UGC says 20% of your education has to come from these sources. Have we really done that? No, we have not done that. We need to do that. There is this unusually suspicious, and I'm going to say something very controversial. There's something very suspicious about the student-teacher relations. We're constantly groping to see, are the teachers teaching properly? Are the students learning properly? We have to repose more trust in our students. We have to work hard. In a way, this pandemic situation has shown us that we have to innovate. We cannot but innovate. And frankly, this pandemic situation has shown us how impossible the tutorials are. The tutorials have to be way more innovative. Exams have to be rethought. Now the old questions cannot work. Now we have to think about other modes of exams. For example, we keep talking about open book exam. We keep talking about take home exam. But then those exams have to be delivered, in a way that the take home exam, there are things where you have to sort of absorb, and then you have to analyze, and then you have to bring your own thoughts on that. You cannot, for example, as a social scientist, finish your answer by saying Foucault said this and Agamben said this and I'm done. No, you have to now say what you as a student want to say. And the teachers, the prep time, my goodness, Lydia was talking about it. The prep time will increase, yes, but I am very hopeful about the teachers, both in my country and elsewhere, that they are some of the most brilliant innovators. They are, we have managed imparting education to all the corners, all the difficult corners of India. So now is another challenge, and there's no reason why we cannot take up these challenges. But we have to decide that the old model will not work. The country is now in the thirst for new models. And the central government says they will devote 6% of the GDP to education. Well, yes, of course, that is wonderful, bravo. But where will that money come from? We need to know about those allocations. We cannot be, lulled into thinking that, okay, we will get something, wonderful. We have to really know from where that money will come and where will that money go. Will there be a corporate managerial style of higher education? Should we say bye-bye to the traditional university? I do not think so. Traditional university, um, you know, has been there for a very, very long time, but it has to change its mode of education because, the nature of university has to change beyond recognition because there are distinct streams. One that prepares students for industry, the other that will prepare students for academics and research. Even if COVID-19 passes, and I'm hopeful it will with the vaccines and all coming up, but online teaching is here to stay. Hybridization is here to stay because that is the only way where we can bring the universe to our students. Before, we had seminars, workshops, and we were always scratching our heads as to from where we will get the money to bring in scholars from all over the world so that our students can be benefited by them. But today, we can think about the digital mode where we can listen to lectures from really, really brilliant people from all over the world and bring them to our university, bring their voices to our university. Somebody like Lydia Potts can regularly give lecture in my forced migration course because, there is that collegiality, there is that, understanding. We have to develop transnational communities if we want to change education, if we want to cope with COVID-19 or the pandemic. Education cannot remain a solitary pursuit. We have to become transnational. We have to build solidarities. We have to build networks. That is the only way that we can really manage education. So, what I am talking about is intersectionality and intermingling, just the way we were talking about, something that we often discussed before, and that is we've often said that we have to merge disciplines, we have to become interdisciplinary. Today we have to be truly interdisciplinary. Technology has to inform our decisions, and the other thing is we also have to be transnational. But there has to be a different vision. We know that education is an expensive proposition. So we have to make sure that a large section goes to vocational training, a large section goes to industry-oriented training, and people who will go for higher education, they will follow a different trajectory altogether. Today, fieldwork has become impossible. So we have to bring the field to our students, to our academics, to our researchers. That means massive spending. I am aware of the fact that this sort of a spending for a poor country like India is very problematic, but we need to focus towards that because we need to build our youth, because our youth is our capital, our social capital. Without the capital, no industry will, no industry will function. Nothing will function. So we have to rethink, re-prepare, put our energy into a new mode of education and bring it forward. And I'm sure this is a difficult process, but this is not completely impossible. This is doable. We are doing it, and we will keep on doing it. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Paula. Very, very nice, very, very lucid. And we have several questions. And Dr. Potts is very smart. She has already replied few of them. Anyway, I have to communicate a few questions to you. But since I am the moderator, I have my own right to ask the first question. Well, my question goes to Dr. Potts. Dr. Potts, can you hear me?
Yes,
Dr.
I can
Potts,
hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, as a history lover person, I know that the pandemic appeared several times in the Earth's history. It is not uncommon that it happened for the first time in the world. Last pandemic was just 100 years back. That was Spanish flu. In disaster management, there is a saying which I corroborate, that this natural disaster is a misnomer. Nature doesn't may cause any disaster. Nature causes calamities. It is the unpreparedness of the human being that convert the calamities to disasters. So my question is, are we not prepared for the pandemic or something like that? It could be a World War III. It could be some other social disequilibrium. So are we absolutely unaware of these possibilities which are already existing in the history? And that's why we are facing so much a problem?
Well, this is a rather philosophical question. And maybe I'm in a certain bubble, but at this point, I do think that as compared to the rest of the world, in the German situation, we are sort of coping rather well. And also when listening to Professor Banerjee's presentation, I do think that in India are much more difficult to address and to cope with. And so I would think with Germany being a welfare state and with various other, and the wealth, it's sort of from the perspective of higher education, lets us cope quite well. See, what I'm more afraid of is, with regard to higher education in Germany, is that we will, in the next 5 years or so, we'll see massive shifts, and that we have to sort of address these.
Okay.
Yeah, but so I'm very much aware that the situation in India, or as we've been working with South Africa, but even in the US, the situations are quite different from what we face here right now. Right now, at least, might shift.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to the questions. We have three questions. One from Dr. Oishani Bhattacharya, and which you have already addressed. But since your answer should reach to other participants as well. And then came Niladri Ghosh, and then Neil Banerjee. Well, first two person, Niladri both of them actually talked about Indian-centric situation, that this digital divides in India is a real big issue. So online course, well, is a good option, but they actually spoke about, or they are interested to know, if there is a digital divide, means there is no phone connectivity, or there is not availability of technologies in different parts of India, or if I don't have the reading materials because nobody has the library which is required for that person for his or her studies, then what should we do? I really do not know whether Dr. Potts will take the question, or Dr. Banerjee will take the question.
Since it is
Because
India,
these
I
are,
think, yeah. Pulakta, since it's India, why don't I have a go at it?
yeah, that's why. I mean, since the question was raised during her talk, so anyway, so I know that you are the right person to answer.
Yeah, I mean, see, the thing is, that is happening. So there is no, this is not a question out of the blue. We are grappling with it. But very frankly, the area that you're talking about, the area where there are no libraries, no digital, mode of education, that's sort of an area today. Indian technology is very, very well developed actually. And we are discussing how we can load a 6-month syllabus, like a semester syllabus, on a tablet and send it to students, anywhere. So it's expensive, but it can happen. Let's say if um, uh, industries or organizations like Microsoft, Google, then Infosys, Wipro, all these come together and decide that they will produce cheap tablets and, load syllabus for a semester and send it to students in remote areas, they can do that. It just needs a re-envisioning. And yes, one of you said that it is massive spending. Education has always been a sector where there is massive spending. You cannot say that research, unless it's some kind of a technological research, social science research does not produce money. We do not have patents. We have to, and it is expensive. When we do field work, we have to stay in a particular area for a month, 2 months, etc. We have all done that. So it is expensive. Now we will have to reorient ourselves. When we talk about developing our people who are well versed in technology, get ideas, and this idea of loading a syllabus in a tablet and once a week coming to a center with where you get some smartphones to discuss with your faculty members or with experts is something that is already being discussed in certain circles. Education is our moral right. It's our duty. So we cannot say that we will keep a sector uneducated. We have to think of something. And this problem did not start with the pandemic. This problem of remote areas not receiving education has been there for hundreds of years. So we should have already started thinking about it. Now it is becoming imperative. So be it. So be it. Now, if this pandemic leads us to question this sort of a divide in our own country, we need to address that question. That is why I will welcome these sort of questionings. And if it's a question of spending, yes, let us take away money from some of the stupid spending that we do and spend on education. The government has to tell us that from which sectors they will bring in money to education, because otherwise if it just says 6% of the GDP, it means nothing. We really don't know what is going to happen.
Professor Banerjee, there is a suggestion from Professor Amitav Gupta. He is always very passionate. I'm just telling you the gist of his things.
Yeah.
That he suspects that the digital divide is not because of the distance only. The digital divides can also occur in a department or a university if some teachers are not well equipped with the technology. So even if you distribute tablets and other things, other gadgets, so basically if the switch is not on, then whatever lighting you have will remain dark. So, I mean,
I agree.
how to address these things?
Yeah, because we've been doing
That is
these
his
stupid
suggestion.
refreshers. Yeah,
This
Amitav
is
Babu,
reality.
I completely agree. We've been doing stupid refresher courses all our lives. I am completely against those refresher courses. They don't teach us much. People taking those refresher courses actually tick boxes. They're not even interested in the lectures. So instead, let's do a course on technology. Let our, historians, political scientists, English teachers get together and do a course on technology and see how technology can be sort of, harnessed for our education. And you're completely right. Digital divide is not just because of remoteness of the area. Digital divide is, is as a result of our inability to access or to address that divide. We have an alumni association of Presidency College. Many of us are from Presidency College, and I'm in the executive council now. So we are having this discussion when the principal of Bethune College told us that, think of a course where our teachers can, learn how to make PowerPoints, can learn how to access technology, so we need a reorientation. And unless the teachers are willing to be reoriented, well, then they cannot survive in this market. Slowly, we are moving to a market situation. So this will become one of the necessary skills that you have to acquire. And, instead of those crazy, antiquated refresher courses should actually refresh us through technology, through teaching us how to address this new mode of education.
Professor Banerjee, I wish your message is heard by the policymakers because this is in fact, the disease lies here. In fact, we are possibly, treating the symptoms. So we have two more questions. I hope that Dr. Potts can take it. Neil Banerjee has an interesting observation and a question is learning psychological components because we are not used to these things. Okay, that well, in few courses may be fine, but a semester or 2 semester, 3 semester, possibly we are not used to. So there can be a psychological aspect and how the student should deal with it. The psychological problem again can be from the viewpoint of the teacher and also from the viewpoint of the students. It is a very important issue. As a teacher, I feel that this is a very relevant question. Now, what is your take on?
Yeah, no, I also think it's a very relevant question. And so, in a way, quite a few students, but also teachers in this time of the pandemic, we wake up in the morning and we stay home all day and we should do a number of things, but then why should we do them and all that? So I do think for that it really helps to have a structure in the day, and then also to have as much social interaction as is possible, so that students who take a class should also have smaller meetings with their classmates to discuss certain content or a task or prepare something for the class. I think that's very, very important. And if it cannot be done physically, it should be on WhatsApp or in a virtual way. So I think to bring as much of a social dimension into it is part of the answer. And yeah, and that I think, yeah, and the other dimension is sort of structuring life as far as possible. And but then on the other hand, I think there's limitations to that. And as teachers, I think we can also sort of encourage students to have these extra meetings. If we provide space in the classroom, in the virtual classroom, to have such meetings, I think they are often starting points for more stuff that the students do.
Ulabda, I have an observation and I have a question too, if I am allowed to put that.
Just one moment. Just hold on for a minute, because there is one more question from Amitabh. Stay there, please.
Yeah.
Please just to wait for 1 minute. So there is one more question. Of course, this is a question which bothers all the science and technology teachers, that how to manage practical labs via online mode. Because you need your hands on the things. Now in a new environment, I mean, how to cope up with these things?
Pulauta, here we need your input. Neither me nor Professor Potts are scientists, We are a different kind of scientist.
No,
It's
this again, I tell you, I mean, this is basically social science in this sense that we know that there is no replacement of practical. One set of practical can only be replaced with another set of practical. But again, we have to devise in a way so that, well, 100% cannot be managed, but at least 70-80%, that virtual practical or something like that, with an expectation that soon we'll have a window when they can go there and use their hand and make the hand and instrument coordination. So again, it is the
like
teacher's
saying,
psyche,
how can
innovation.
Yeah, for example, a doctor, a surgeon cannot be taught on a virtual mode. You need a body to learn how to do the operations. So, in
if
fact,
the doctor doesn't study these things in his student life, would you like to visit such doctors who are educated in online?
I just want to point out something over here, that this concept has changed radically. I was a judge in one of the colleges in India called UNC, and the medical training.
Your voice is cutting. Amitabh, your voice is cutting.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The innovation that won the first prize was actually a dissection of the heart, through 3D modeling. And we are shifting more and more towards model-based things. I just wanted to point out something as well. You see, in our university, if you take the number of computers that we have and the number of computers that we actually recycle every year, you would be astonished that with a fraction of the price, you can actually buy laptops for students who don't have them. And if you are running a computer lab, you can just loan this to students. I have seen this in Germany. There was a program called a notebook PC lab, where the students had given, particularly foreign students, you mentioned. Now, here too means buying desktops.
Amitavo, we are badly running short of time. I mean, can you be
Yeah,
little
so
brief in
basically,
doing?
so
I'm
the
sorry.
idea is that you can easily give laptops to students on loan, and that can actually address the digital divide in a big way. For a computer lab, ask them to bring them to the lab. That's it. Why keep the computer there and underutilized or staying there and doing nothing? Isn't it?
Okay. And Shushmita, have you consumed the time so that I can hand
Yes, we
over the
have.
button to? Yeah. So with
Please.
this, I thank both Dr. Potts and Professor Banerjee for this wonderful talks. And we look forward to hear from you again. And I hope that Shushmita will take a note, and because this is a never-ending topic, and we have to keep on, organizing it. So thank you so much. I thank all the audience. The interactive mode was excellent. I hope all of us have learned, and your talks actually provoked our thought process. And thank you again. And I now hand over to Shushmita for her valedictory notes.
Thank you. On behalf of the German Consulate General Kolkata, I'd like to thank our guest speakers, Dr. Lydia Potts and Professor Paula Banerjee, for their engrossing lectures. Thank you, both of you. I also thank our moderator, Professor Pulakshan Gupta, and the participants for making the first web-based session of our science lecture successful, if I may say so. We have noted the suggestion of our moderator, Professor Pulakshan Gupta. We will see if it would be possible, it would be a possibility rather to have another session on a similar topic in a foreseeable future. This session of science lectures is available on YouTube at the channel of the German Consulate General Kolkata. Thank you, Riddhiman Ganguly, for putting the session on YouTube. Now I would like to express my gratitude to 3 former Humboldt Fellows, without whose support these web-based science lectures wouldn't have been possible. They are Dr. Shyam Sengupta of ISAR Kolkata, Professor Ranjan Ganguly, and today's moderator, Professor Pulakshan Gupta, both from Jadavpur University. In order to ensure the continued success of this initiative to promote collaboration between Germany and India and to expand the existing contacts in science and technology, that includes social science too, we would request active support of the science and research communities as well as the science, research, and technology-based industries in both the countries. Our next web-based science lectures will be on 27th August on surface tension from fascinating physics to future technologies, as you see on the screen. Please look for the invitation. We conclude today's program here. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Stay
thank you
safe.
very much for having